point guard. How does that help you, especially with all your injuries you had last year and just Ravens' defensive versatility?
Well, we're not speaking those into existence anymore. But I think it helps because Ty is a player who's a combo who can play on and off the ball. Caitlin is a player who can play on and off the ball. Raven is a point guard that primarily has had the ball in her hands, and so I think it gives us.
What are you talking about? That's what Caitlin Clark is. Caitlin Clark is a point guard who primarily has had the ball in her hands her entire life. What are you talking about, Caitlin?
Listen carefully to what is being said. Caitlin Clark is playing without the ball, while Raven Johnson has the ball in her hands. This is not just a random comment from training camp. This is the Indiana Fever's head coach clearly explaining a plan where one of the league's most exciting point guards is used mainly as a spot-up shooter. The reaction you're seeing isn't fake anger, it's real shock from someone who just heard a coach describe a strategy that could limit a truly special player.
Just Ravens' defensive versatility.
Well, we're not speaking those into existence anymore. But I think it helps because Ty is a player who's a combo who can play on and off the ball. Caitlin is a player who can play on and off the ball. Raven is a point guard that primarily has had the ball in her hands, and so I think it gives us some versatility. Thankfully, having a couple of different guards gives us the ability to allow Kelsey to rest a little bit, too. So, I think we'll have a pretty good rotation when it comes to our perimeter players. Especially in the 1 to 2 spot. I think it'll give us a lot of different ways that we can play. A lot of different matchups that we can play against. We can get different.
Now pay attention to the explanation here. Stephanie White talks about versatility, different options, and defensive lineups, common coaching terms that sound good at first. But what she's really suggesting is something else. She wants to take a player who averaged 19.2 points and 8.4 assists as a rookie, led the league with 337 total assists, and even broke the single-season assist record, and move her away from the role where she controls the offense. It's like saying Steph Curry would be more useful just standing in the corner. The comparison to Ty Harris also says a lot. White coached Harris in Connecticut, where she averaged only 6.1 points per game before getting injured. Now Harris is being seen as someone who can share ball-handling duties with a player who finished second in Rookie of the Year voting and helped lead the Fever to the playoffs for the first time since 2016.
About how Kelsey Mitchell's the #1 priority, and she's just, let's listen, man.
Joining me now, the special guest herself, Indiana Fever head coach Stephanie White. Steph, this has been a wild offseason with the CBA finally passing, free agency opening. You guys made a lot of moves, none greater than re-signing Kelsey Mitchell to a Supermax deal with $1.4 million. Why was it so important to get Mitchell back?
I wouldn't have signed her to that. Everybody else took less than 1.4. Everybody else took less than that. Kelsey Paul, everybody. I would have gave it at 1.4. We could have used that bread on a couple other players. What we talking about?
This team.
Well, she was priority #1, just as she was a year ago. I think that you saw Kelsey Mitchell and what she's capable of doing on a consistent basis. She was in the MVP running. She's been.
And there it is. Kelsey Mitchell was treated as the top priority, not the player who packed arenas, boosted WNBA viewership by 170%, and drew an average of 1.32 million viewers on ESPN compared to 440,000 for games without her. Mitchell is a great player, but she received a $1.4 million Supermax deal, while the league's biggest star likely accepted less. Listen to how Stephanie White talks about both players. Mitchell is called the backbone of the franchise and praised as an MVP-level talent, while Clark is simply described as someone who can play on or off the ball, the kind of basic description usually given to a role player, not someone who completely changed the financial future of the team.
And we can go with a defensive lineup. When you've got somebody like Raven, Ty played for us in Connecticut, so she understands what we're about on the defense.
Bro, we don't want to see no damn Raven Johnson and Ty Harris in the game at the same time at the guards. What are you smoking? Are you on something? Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you talking about? This is insanity, man. This lady has lost it. This lady has lost it, man. This is 100% pure sabotage by Stephanie White, Amber Cox, Kelly Crosskoff in the Indiana Fever front office. Pure sabotage. Lynn Dunn, keep your eyes peeled. Eyes peeled. Watch this lady.
Here's where the plan becomes clear. White wants Raven Johnson, who averaged 8.2 points and 5.5 assists at South Carolina last season, to be the main point guard with the ball in her hands. Think about what that really means. In White's system, Johnson needs the ball to be effective, but Clark, who ran Iowa's offense for 4 years and led the NCAA with 8.9 assists per game as a senior, is being called more versatile without the ball. This doesn't feel like pure basketball strategy. It feels like a coach trying to fit a special talent into her system instead of building the system around that talent. It's similar to the issues the Fever had under Christie Sides, just explained in a different way. White talks about versatility and defense, but what she's really suggesting is reducing Clark's role so other players can fit more easily.
Ever heard her talk about when Caitlin Clark was in the MVP running in her rookie season? Have you ever heard Stephanie White mention that? No, but she mentions it for Kelsey Mitchell. Get this lady out of here, man.
A long time, and the way that she pairs with Caitlin, the way that she pairs with Aaliyah, she's the fastest player in the league with the ball in her hands, and it was imperative that we got her back, so I'm thankful that we did.
The Ty Harris edition shows exactly what White values. Harris is from Indiana, played under White in Connecticut, and is coming off an injury, yet those factors seem to matter more than building the team around the player who dramatically increased the league's visibility. White appears to be putting together a roster of familiar players she trusts and who fit her system, while expecting Clark to adjust to them instead of the system adjusting to her. When you compare this to how top coaches handle special talents, the difference is clear. Greg Popovich built his entire offense around Tim Duncan. Eric Spoelstra reshaped Miami's system to get the best out of LeBron James and then rebuilt it again after he left. Steve Kerr didn't ask Stephen Curry to change his game to fit others. He built the team around Curry's strengths and let him play his natural style.
You still made it to Game 5 of the semifinals. Now you bring back a healthy Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, you re-signed Sophie Cunningham, Lexi Hull. What's the most exciting part about this team when you look forward to this season?
I think it's always exciting when you can bring back a lot of continuity from a successful season. We learned a lot about one another. We learned how important the locker room is and the culture of our team. And we took another step forward as a group. And, I always say there's no substitute for experience, and being right there in those moments, being that close, in spite of what we went through, I think gave this group a hunger to get to that next step and to get to the WNBA finals. Now we got a long way to go. But I think understanding that we've had that experience and knowing what it takes, knowing that we have to sacrifice. So carrying over the continuity, I think, is the most exciting piece for me.
And then you bring in some exciting additions also. Ty Harris, who's a Noblesville native, and then Monique Billings.
Watch White's body language when she talks about these rotations. She looks confident, sure that her plan will work. But that confidence doesn't come from building around Clark's unique ability to create offense. It comes from sticking to a system White believes in, one focused more on defense and positional flexibility than on offensive dominance. That kind of approach might work with average players, but it can hold back someone like Clark. The idea of using a defensive lineup with Raven Johnson is especially concerning. Johnson is a great defender. She even made the SEC All-Defensive Team in 2024, but defense wasn't the Fever's main issue last season. They were average defensively, allowing 83.7 points per game, ranking 6th in the league. The real problem was offense, especially when Clark sat or when teams trapped her and forced the ball out of her hands. The solution isn't to give someone else control, it's to surround Clark with shooters and cutters who can take advantage when defenses focus on her. This situation matters even more because the Indiana Fever just had one of the biggest business turnarounds in WNBA history. They went from small crowds to selling out games and setting attendance records, like the 20,333 fans at their June 23 game against the Chicago Sky and 17,035 fans at their playoff game against the Connecticut Sun. That surge didn't happen because of system changes, it happened because Clark played her natural game, controlling the offense, pushing the pace, and creating exciting plays. She averaged 19.2 points, 5.7 rebounds, and 8.4 assists, shot 41.7% from three, and led the league with 122 made threes, all while playing point guard, not standing off the ball. Now White wants to change that, asking Clark to split time on and off the ball to fit a rookie guard and a returning player who averaged 6.1 points before injury. Calling it versatility sounds good, but in reality it limits Clark's impact. Every time she's off the ball, the offense becomes more predictable and less dangerous. Think about what Clark just accomplished. She broke the single-season assist record with 337, led the league in assists per game, recorded multiple triple-doubles as a rookie, and set the rookie scoring record with 769 points. Yet now she's being treated like someone who should adjust her role instead of being the focal point. The comparison with Kelsey Mitchell's situation makes it more frustrating. Mitchell is a great scorer and deserved her $1.4 million deal, but White's comments show who she values most, calling Mitchell the priority and praising her MVP case, even though Clark actually finished higher in MVP voting. Clark isn't talked about as the foundation of the team. Instead, she's described in simple terms, like just another flexible player, rather than the generational talent who changed the league's visibility almost overnight. Even analysts who followed the team closely saw this coming during the coaching search, noting concerns about White's offensive approach from her time in Connecticut, where her teams were solid defensively but often limited on offense. Her system is inconsistent on offense, ranking 7th in offensive rating in 2023 and 6th in 2022. It focuses more on ball movement and flexible positions rather than one player creating everything. That can work when the team is balanced, but it becomes risky when you have a player like Clark who is clearly better than everyone else at creating offense. Watch how White talks about Clark playing off the ball. She doesn't hesitate or suggest it might be controversial. She genuinely believes it's the right plan. That's what worries people. It doesn't look like she's being pressured by anyone. It looks like her personal coaching belief, and she's confident about it even before the season starts. Now compare that to how she describes Raven Johnson. Johnson is expected to be a true point guard who mostly controls the ball. That means when Johnson and Clark are on the floor together, Johnson would likely run the offense while Clark spaces the floor or moves without the ball, similar to a catch-and-shoot role. This difference shows a lot about coaching philosophy. Great coaches adjust their system to fit their best players. Good coaches try to fit players into their system. And average coaches stick to their system even when it might not maximize talent. White seems to be leaning toward the last approach, prioritizing her system over individual strengths. Reporters have already pointed out that this off-ball Clark idea isn't new. Christy Sides tried similar approaches, and it led to some of the Fever's worst offensive stretches. When Clark was used off the ball, the offense slowed down. When she had control, the team looked much more dangerous. The timing also matters. The Fever just had their most successful season in years, made the playoffs for the first time since 2016, and became the league's biggest draw, all with Clark running the offense as the primary ball handler. Now, before even playing a game with this new roster, there's already talk of changing that formula. As the season goes on, this will likely become a constant debate. If the offense struggles, people will ask whether Clark is being used properly. If she's moved off the ball too often, analysts will question the decision. It could feel like the same issues from the previous coaching era. So the big question is whether this coaching change actually fixes anything. The Fever replaced Christy Sides hoping for improvement, but if White's approach is